Hello, everyone. My name is Molly Sachs, and on behalf of Campbell & Company, I'd like to welcome you to Investing in Online Fundraising, How to Show ROI and Build Buy-in. Thanks for joining us today. Before we begin today's webinar, I'd like to quickly go through some logistics for those of you who may be new to our webinars. Close any programs other than GoToWebinar that are running on your computer. We recommend calling in with a telephone instead of using your computer speakers. If you do experience visual issues, send a chat to Campbell & Company or contact GoToWebinar at the number on your screen. Today's webinar will last 45 minutes and you'll earn 0.75 continuing education credits for your participation with CFRE International. Within the next 24 hours, you'll receive an email from GoToWebinar that includes information on how to download your certificate. In that same follow-up email, you'll also receive a link to today's slides along with a link to the recording. We do welcome questions throughout the webinar, so please use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel that should be on the right side of your computer screen. We'll also hold time at the end of the webinar for Q&A. At this point, I'll turn it over to our presenter today, fundraising consultant Lauren Collette.
Great, thank you, Molly, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So as Molly mentioned and the screen shows, my name is Lauren. I am a consultant with Campbell & Company in our Seattle office, and I've been with the firm for 3 years now. Prior to Campbell, I was a frontline fundraiser out in the other Washington, D.C., where I focused on board management and special events at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. And I spent 3 years as the manager of annual giving at the Smithsonian American History Museum. Part of my role at the museum was to manage online fundraising efforts, and since then I've really explored this as an area of interest, I think especially because of its growth and its impact specifically on outreach. I think that it's a focus of fundraising that's rapidly changing, both with technology and the times, and I think what makes it so exciting is we're all learning from each other in regards to strategies, and that's especially true, I think, when you compare it to some more tried and true and best practice fundraising focuses like major gift efforts. So it's really great to be here with you today, and I'm excited to dive in. So what we're hoping you take away today is just some information and knowledge around sector-wide growth, including key statistics you can take back to decision makers, share parallels of online fundraising to online shopping in our consumer experiences and how that translates to what we now expect as a seamless digital experience, how to show the ROI or return on investment of your online fundraising efforts, and how online fundraising aligns with annual giving efforts, because it definitely does. We all know fundraising doesn't exist in a vacuum. So what I did is I organized this presentation today around 3 proof statements and 2 guidelines that I hope when we break each of these down, they're going to help prove or really provide that reason for why or how you can show an investment in online fundraising is critical for your organization, which of course is why you're all here today. So we've heard many times, why should we focus on online fundraising or engagement strategies? And the answer is proof. To ignore online fundraising is to ignore a revenue stream and communication tool that is now widely utilized among nonprofits. So that first proof statement really goes to say online giving isn't a trend, it's a new normal. Also, audiences just expect more from brands now, and we're going to see digital engagement in a nonprofit sector is also playing an essential role in meeting those expectations. I don't know about you, but if you've ever been on a website and it's hard to use, or you're trying to look up something from your phone and it just won't let you, the truth is we're both consumers and donors at any time. So that second proof statement is really going to focus on that experience. And again, as I mentioned, nothing exists in a vacuum when it comes to fundraising. So it's important to align your online strategies with your annual fundraising program in order to help both build awareness and donor engagement to help address acquisition and retention specifically. Next are the 2 guidelines we're going to dive into. First is, I think we all know that data is our best friend, which is why you want to use data and metrics to both analyze your past, predict your future, and that will help you inform better decisions moving forward. And we'll touch on this in regards to benchmarking and other strategies. And then this last guideline, number 2, on your right-hand side of the screen, I really think this is more of a mantra than a guideline, but I really encourage you to keep this in mind, both amongst your team, with leadership, and even just to remind yourself. It's really important to be willing to try new things and learn from them, even if they don't work out. Risk takers take risk for a reason. It leads to innovation and successes. And so more on that at the end. So this is going to look different at every organization in terms of how you can take key steps with your decision makers. Some organizations may not use online fundraising at all, so this just may mean an initial investment with some preliminary ideas. And for some organizations who are integrating it more regularly, this could mean an investment in new tools or strategies. But regardless of where your organization is today, it's going to be important to build your case. So first of all, understand your opportunities and set goals. What are you trying to achieve and why? This can be more than a dollar amount. This may mean engagement too, but really you want to actually understand what it is you're working towards in order to help determine the case you're trying to make. Next is being able to build internal buy-in for strategy. So nothing can happen without leadership's buy-in. So whether it's your manager, maybe the head of your fundraising team, or even leadership at the top level of your organization, understanding who you need approval and buy-in from and how you can achieve that is critical. I remember with my time at the museum, I was trying to launch a new idea, and I was working off of a white paper, and I had to rework it several times, meeting with different leadership at the museum, so that by the time I met with the final decision maker, I had heard everyone's ideas, applied them to my thinking, addressed concerns, and I could talk proactively about them with leadership in order to get final approval. So essentially what you're doing is you're trying to put in the work already in order to build that internal buy-in. And last but not least, I just cannot speak enough of the importance of leveraging external resources. So reports, data, proof statements. You're going to see I do that many times in today's presentation and how much I do this frequently myself in my own work. These are really tools, and they are out there for you to leverage and for you to support your work, learn from, and just help basically leverage in order to make better decisions. So again, these are just some key steps that you can be thinking about in order to help build that full organization investment and buy-in to online fundraising. So we're going to move into proof number 1. So although online giving still represents less than 10% of total fundraising, every year more donors are making their gifts online. So proof number 1 is very data heavy. Online giving isn't a trend, it's the new normal. What we know is that industry-wide data speaks and people listen to it, and there are plenty of reputable industry resources to reference to prove the statement on your screen, which we're going to do here in just a minute. One really exciting thing I just want to mention is that this morning, Blackbaud actually released its 2019 charitable giving report. So we were actually updating our presentation and the numbers and statistics this morning just to make sure we have the most up-to-date information for you. So I encourage you, when you're done with this webinar, go ahead and download the report yourself and skim through, since I'm only going to touch on a couple statistics at a high level, but they'll have a lot more detail which you can dive in and read yourself. So proof number 1, in 2019, charitable giving in the U.S. grew by 1%, based on the analysis of $36 billion in donations. So that's what the 2019 charitable report just found. And as a result of that, the percentage of total fundraising that came from online giving in 2019 was 8.7%. And that was showing growth of 6.8% year over year from 2018. That's incredible. So basically in 2018, we actually saw a bit more of leveling out. There was only, based on resources you looked at, about a 1 to 3% growth year over year for online fundraising. So this level of growth is actually really strong, and it's more in line with trends that we saw prior to 2018. So for me, numbers tell a story, and I think understanding context is really important. So taking that into account, there were years and years of steadily increasing online fundraising revenue, including a record-breaking 2016 and 2017. And suddenly in 2018, that trend slowed down, or so that story says. But one factor that could include the increased momentum from the 2016 presidential election, which afterwards saw a significant spike in types of giving, especially online giving. So perhaps for me, what I'm seeing this number in 2019 return to more significant growth levels. For my opinion, that means maybe 2018 was just a leveling out from what we saw happening in 2016 and 2017, and now we're returning to those stronger numbers. I just think it's interesting, again, to look at context, to think about what's happening more macro level, just to understand these numbers. So in terms of the percentage of total fundraising that comes from online giving, animal welfare, arts and culture, faith-based, and K-12 education organizations have now all crossed over the 10% threshold in their online giving program. And we're going to expect to see this trend increase across a broader set of subsectors, and it also grew across organizations of all sizes, both small, medium, and large. So overall, we're seeing a lot of growth. And of course, I think charitable giving as a single number is only going to paint a partial picture of our landscape of what we're looking at for philanthropy. So what we see in a 3-year trend is overall giving is up 5% and online donations nearly 10%. So again, we're seeing really strong growth. So these next set of stats, I'm not surprised by this. Mobile traffic accounted for 48% of nonprofit website visitors in 2018. In my personal life, I use my phone way more than my laptop. And additionally, it's projected that mobile traffic is going to exceed desktop traffic within the next few years. And for some nonprofits, it already has. And so then to tie that into fundraising, 26% of online transactions in 2018 were made using a mobile device. So that is now more of a quarter of online donations are coming through our mobile phones. And this has really grown dramatically when in 2014, that number was just 9%. So what every nonprofit needs to understand is that being mobile friendly is being donor friendly, and it's really no longer an option. And a lack of mobile friendly websites, donation forms, or emails are going to be putting you at a distinct disadvantage. So being sure to invest in those tools and spending time and resources on them is really becoming more and more critical. Next, online giving is just not for $10 gifts only, which I think sometimes there is a perception around that. It's for really small gifts. What we saw is that the average online donation size was $148 in 2019. However, the median or the midpoint donation for gifts above $1,000 was around $2,050. And that's pretty high considering that's considered mid-level giving at many large organizations. So I also included this email stat at the bottom, which is email revenue declined in 2018, yet accounted for 13% of online giving in here to show that there won't always be increases. Again, I think email revenue saw some really strong increases in 2016, 2017, declined in 2018, and especially what we call rights nonprofit experienced the steepest decline, a 40% drop from the previous year. Again, 2017 and 2016 saw extraordinary growth tied to the presidential election. So again, for me, this means perhaps 2018 was just a drop-off year after a very active year towards these rights campaigns such as ACLU or Planned Parenthood. So to wrap up this proof, I could spend so much more time going through data and statistics, but I just want to encourage you, use industry-wide data as a tool to support whatever you want to do with online fundraising. There's so much information out there that can help both paint a picture and help you better understand where you're falling at your organization. So our team believes that one of the reasons online giving is experiencing this level of growth is due to an increase in attention to the donor online experience and multi-channel strategies. So that's going to lead us into proof statement number 2. Audiences expect more from brands, and digital engagement plays an essential role in meeting those expectations. So for me, this sentiment translates really directly to online fundraising. Our donors are consumers, and their experiences elsewhere are going to frame their context for what they expect from nonprofits. So research by Salesforce found that 80% of customers feel that the experience a company provides is more important than its products or services. And 57% stopped buying from a company because they had a better experience somewhere else. I just find that completely fascinating. And of course, technology is playing a significant role in this, with 59% of customers expecting cutting-edge digital experiences to keep their business. So we're going to dive into this more and even further tie it to online fundraising strategies. So this slide speaks to the similarity between identities and how that impacts online fundraising experiences. So as our audiences move from one experience to another, they're not setting different standards in terms of their experience. So consumers at any brand store are going to expect a seamless experience. They're not going to switch gears when they go to a nonprofit's website. If it looks outdated, if it's confusing, if it's complicated to make a gift and hindering their experience, they're going to jump ship. This is absolutely related to being a donor or a consumer. And essentially what we're trying to achieve is a tailored service, a great experience, and fast gratification. And the same goes with our donors distinguishing between online giving and offline giving. I don't know about you, but I've never heard a donor say, I'm an online donor, not an offline donor. So sure, people give through different channels, but that isn't an identity to them the way that we may segment or categorize our audiences internally at an organization. So the identity that we assign to them is not from their point of view. I think that nonprofits can struggle with this because you have staff who are experts in membership, in online fundraising, telemarketing, mid-level giving, and so forth. But it's important to think about it from a donor perspective because they aren't compartmentalizing their experiences. So they should be having a seamless experience online through and through every time they interact with your organization. So it's important to make sure, just to remember, you're trying to connect to a donor because they're tied to their cause, your movement, or your mission, and they're going to expect the same experience as their quote-unquote consumer experiences. So unsurprisingly, experience matters, and this really goes into that multi-channel approach. All parts equal a greater whole. All of the tools and channels you use to reach your supporters and facilitate their experience should be utilized fully to maximize that giving experience. If your email's call to action or website's donate button isn't clear or easy to find, people will leave your website. If it takes more than 3 clicks to make a gift, you're going to confuse or frustrate and therefore deter people from giving to you. And when an organization optimizes their website or email campaigns for mobile, you're ensuring that your visitors and viewers have a positive experience. It's worth investing in these tools and these channels to make sure that you're setting up your audience for the most success to give to you. This is really foundational. It can be as much as ensuring font sizes are large enough to read on a smartphone, using short blocks of text, resizing images to load quickly, or employing buttons or links that are just big enough to press on a small touch screen. And it could also be a bit more robust and advanced, like accepting mobile pay services like Apple Pay. What that essentially does is it allows donors to skip the step of entering their payment info to make the donation process even more streamlined. And we're seeing organizations ask many more questions about that. And on average, 30% of donors who made an online gift to a nonprofit in 2017 made an online gift again to that nonprofit in 2018. So small steps in terms of stewardship, like a thank you landing page or a welcome email landing page that includes impact messaging, an opportunity to share the donation via social media, can be really important and play a key role in engagement and future fundraising. And I could truthfully spend hours breaking down each of these pieces, but since I don't have the time, I'll remind you that all of these tie together and impact a donor's experience. Equally as important to think about is the importance of content strategy. Your channels are going to be more than about giving, and a bigger picture will result in better fundraising. So engaging donors, raising awareness, creating trust are all things that content does really well. What you're hoping to do is build awareness, increase engagement, convert that interest into be able to create supporters and ambassadors for your organization. So going through what you see on your screen here, Visuals are high performers on social media. So compared to other types of content, it's 40 times more likely to get shared on social media. So content with relevant images rack up 94% more views than content without images. Next is to adhere to the 80-20 rule. 80% of posts should be interesting, impact-related content relevant to your nonprofit, and the other 20% can be more promotional focused. Video is a really effective means of communication. 50% of Americans who use Facebook watch one video per day. I know I probably fall into that bucket as well. And so you want to use videos to tell your story. And this doesn't just mean professionally created videos. It can be more low cost too. For instance, if you're at a conservation site with a program team member, you can take a video through your iPhone or your smartphone and upload it to your social media channels or put it into an email for content. And then last but not least, your audience expects a response. So the statistic here is that 71% on Twitter, 83% on Facebook expect the same day to have a reply when they message or they comment. So what this shows is it's just not about the setup, it's also about the follow through. If you send emails, make sure someone is checking the inbox if you put that in the email in terms of, if you have more questions, email us here. Make sure someone's looking at that inbox and make sure you have someone active on social media to meet expectations and to reply back to people. We get asked many times, what are some additional content ideas? So I wanted to provide some for you today. In terms of post content, ensure that you're demonstrating to followers how you serve your mission through donations or testimonials or stories. According to Nonprofit Tech for Good, of social media users who support nonprofits online, 56% said that a compelling storytelling is what motivated them to make a donation. We also suggest trying a recurring theme, so developing a catchy weekly hashtag to share something relevant about your organization is just one idea. Example, the Animal Humane Society has Success Story Saturday, and the Red Cross has Fire Safety Friday. And this can really go a long way in terms of making sure your audiences are looking forward to your posts. We recommend sharing news relevant to your organization or promoting your events. Of course, impact and tying content to your mission is very critical, but also share news if you are in headlines in a positive way, making sure your donors are up to date with what is happening, both just in terms of the news as well as what's happening on site. Be funny and relevant. So we encourage you to reference pop culture, use memes, and be clever in terms of your content to engage users. It's a positive thing to have a personality behind the content, and that's what people want to interact with at the end of the day. And lastly, leverage social media and platforms as a way to publicly thank donors or acknowledge supporters. If a volunteer reaches a milestone or you receive a big donation, turn to social media to say thank you. People always appreciate being recognized, especially widely like that. So to wrap up proof statement number 2, if someone were to say, why is investing in online fundraising important to us? You can share how donors now expect a seamless digital experience. And this is true because of their experience as consumers each and every day. And that their impact on all platforms, being social, email, your website, mobile responsiveness, really does make a difference in giving and engaging. And content is something to invest time and energy into because it can be strategically used to convert your audience into donors. So moving on to proof number 3, align your online strategies with annual fundraising to build awareness and donor engagement to address acquisition and retention. So I mentioned this before, but although you're going to segment your online donors, a supporter won't think of themselves that way. And many entry-level online donations are going to fall into your annual giving or membership category, and therefore they're going to fall into that annual giving cycle of fundraising. So aligning your online metrics and measurement with your annual giving performance indicators are going to be really critical to just looking at your program in a holistic way. So a few key performance indicators here for annual giving. And of course, this is just 3 of the primary metrics. There are many more we could go into, but it is important to understand, I think, these 3 especially. So first of all, retention. This is a metric that's defined by the number of donors who give in the previous fiscal year and then do so again in your current fiscal year. We work so hard to acquire and reactivate donors, but what we really want to do is to keep those who are already with us. So Blackbaud's 2019 report found that 64% of online gifts were from repeat donors, representing a 4% year-over-year growth. So whether you're giving online or through more traditional methods, high retention happens when you are stuck in the minds of your donors throughout the year. So when your organization's work is essentially burned into the psyche of your donors, and they're going to be ready and willing to act on appeals when they see it on social media or it comes through their inbox. And for a growing majority of Americans, one of the best way to remain stuck in their minds is going to be through good social media strategy, that multi-channel approach, including digital tools like social media and email. So reactivation here, this is the metric defined by capturing lapsed donors who don't contribute for a year or more. Diligent reactivation is going to be really critical since these folks have already given before. So to some degree, they've bought into your mission and they're hopefully more willing to come back and give than someone who maybe cold to your organization and doesn't know much about it. So we see the highest reactivation rates for donors lapsed 1 year. So segment these donors and use a clear call to action in email to support any outreach that you send. Focusing on content and impact, again, remind them why they gave in the first place is going to be really important to helping to reactivate and bring these folks back into your fundraising. And last but not least, acquisition. This metric is defined by the number of new donors. And although this can be one of the most challenging pieces of the puzzle, it's going to be really critical to grow your donor pool and, of course, cover inevitable attrition when people do lapse. So again, you want to align your online strategies with these quote-unquote offline strategies of annual giving. So you want to make sure clear call to actions for email, social media, or a sophisticated email strategy can all be leveraged as acquisition tools. So Blackbaud report called this the feel-good story of 2019. I just loved that. Sustainer revenue grew 13.6% year over year, representing 11.5% total of fundraising. So for those of you who may be unsure what sustainer revenue is, that is essentially people who sign up to give a certain amount over a certain time frame. So they may say, I'm going to give $30 a month, which means then they're giving X amount per year. So this monthly giving, allowing people to opt into monthly giving, these automatic charges, helps promote retention. It's going to build relationships. And monthly givers average higher annual gift amounts than one-time givers. So this should really be a part of every nonprofit's annual giving, but also online fundraising strategy. It's really a long-term strategy for you, and it's going to help your organization create a solid base of support for your mission. Blackbaud also saw a correlation between sustainer revenue growth and overall fundraising results, which is really interesting. So basically what we're finding is that allowing your donors to give a certain amount of their choosing is going to automatically help you with retention. So make sure not only being creative in terms of your digital fundraising campaigns to acquire and to upgrade monthly donors, you can do that to also upgrade your monthly sustainers, and it's just going to help you build those excellent retention strategies. So make sure, whether it's through email, social media, your online donation forms, if you haven't already explored a sustainer program, we highly suggest you do. So again, this can benefit your organization in many ways. So some strategies to think of: taking a long-term approach. Reoccurring donors are going to give more to you over time. They're more loyal, they're easier to retain, and they can be steered towards higher giving levels and increases. You want to streamline giving options, so optimize your donation form so it's short and accepts several forms of payment. Communication is key. These folks want to be engaged, and they can often be asked to be given additional gifts throughout the year and to be called on for volunteering needs. And lastly, this is a very strategic option, the Sustainer program, to present for all new donors. So make sure you're promoting it. And I don't know about you, but how much better does it sound to say, for $1,000, we can do X, so won't you consider $83 a month? Sometimes breaking it down is less intimidating for people than thinking of an overall number. So to wrap up this section, this proof is going to help explain why online fundraising is tied to and can help enhance your annual giving strategies. And if you don't have one already, consider an investment in a reoccurring giving program, especially through online channels. So guideline number 1 is to use data and metrics to analyze the past, predict the future, and inform better decisions. So data and metrics are just so important because they help move organizations away from acting on anecdotal evidence. And this matters because you're going to ultimately make decisions to drive more revenue from your organization or to help build buy-in for investment in online fundraising and related strategies. So what I want to say about how to measure a digital ROI for fundraising is that there's really no hard and fast rule that's like a gold standard at this point. So when asking what's the value of an online donor or how much to invest in your online program, the question is it's going to look different for everyone, and it really is going to depend on your organization and its goals. But here are some key questions that I think you can ask to help make that determination for yourself. The first is, what percentage of your program is brought in by online fundraising? If it's 2%, you're going to probably answer differently than if it's 20%. But the second question, not on the screen, that's related to this is, how much are you trying to increase or invest in it? That's really key too to understanding your strategy around it. Next are 2 considerations you can take time to think about and then think with your team and leadership. To simplify matters, I thought about this in terms of primary categories of investment around people and tools. So for people, do you tend to outsource or are you going to prefer to hire in-house? This is a really important question to confront, just to consider the human resources that go into running a good digital program. A quick Google search is going to demonstrate the abundance of service providers who can help you optimize your website, blog, podcast, run an email campaign, and more. So it may not be worth the time to invest internally. It may be an external resource. And next is tools. So this is the area of greatest cost variance among organizations. And to be clear, a basic set of tools would include website, email, digital fundraising systems, a database, and so forth. So online fundraising metrics, I'm not going to be able to at the time today walk through each and every one of these metrics, but what I want to just share with you is that measuring your performance through metrics is going to be critical for your success. So as we spoke to earlier in the annual giving world, success metrics are often referred to as key performance indicators. And these metrics are just analytical tools that can be used to continue raising more and more funds. And so we encourage organizations at a minimum to set and track online fundraising based on data from the previous year. And I'll speak to this here in a few moments, but you can also benchmark yourself against national standards as a starting point or a building block. I'll go into this at a very high level, but we actually broke down each of these metrics in an April 2019 webinar on how to craft a winning online fundraising plan. So if you go on Campbell's website, you can definitely look that up and see that for a bit more of a specific breakdown around these. But some email metrics you may want to think about is open rate. So that's the percentage of email recipients who open your messages. And perhaps you're going to see, based on a national average or based on a year prior or two at your own organization, if you're looking internally, maybe you have a low open rate. So that can recommend testing on how well your organization's subject lines work or perhaps changing the sender. Let's see here. Another metric for email is the click-through rate. So that's the percentage of people who opened your email that also clicked on a link within the message. This is basically telling you how effectively your emails are getting readers to take action and learn more. So while you certainly want your audience just to open and read them, the next step is to encourage them to click to another page, such as a website, a blog post, a petition, or a donate page. For social media, I'm going to get into that here in a moment, but you definitely want to think through engagement score. So that's just the number of people a post may engage through a click, a reaction, a share, or a comment, as well as some of these other also click-through rates, the average gift size that you receive from these different channels and so forth. And then texting, an M&R 2019 report shared that fundraising text messages had a 13% click-through rate. That's huge. So if you have a call program, Even if you want to explore texting, that's definitely an avenue that more donors are getting used to, but you're also going to need to have a sense of your donor's cell phone number. So that's something to think about there. So website data and metrics matter too. So for those of you who have not already done so, Google Analytics is a free web tool that generates detailed statistics about activity on a website. It can help your organization analyze visitor traffic and just paint a complete picture for you of your audience and their needs and whatever path they are on to donate. It's a really powerful tool, so again, I highly recommend it. And what you see is that you can get both key metrics and sample dashboards from Google Analytics. So for example, under the key metrics page, you may understand landing pages more. So what pages are leading to the most donations, meaning revenue and number of gifts, or perhaps conversions. So understanding this means you can pick your best landing pages and examine what makes them so great. Are there more compelling stories? Is there strong call to actions? What strategies are being used there in order to apply more broadly to bring in more revenue? You can also better understand traffic sources. Maybe you're getting a lot of traffic like from one source, like a search, but visitors from another traffic source, like your email newsletters, are ultimately making more donations. So knowing what traffic source is driving the most donations can help you determine which ones are working and which ones may need more attention. Referrals is when a visitor comes to your site by clicking a link from another website. This could be in a press release, an article of one of your events, or a comment you left on someone's blog with a link back to your site. And last but not least is popular pages. So there are likely multiple paths your visitor is going to take to make a donation on your website, and tracking the pages before they get to a donation page can help you understand what pages are resonating most with potential donors. So some pages, like a Get Involved, will probably make more sense, but others, maybe a link to blog posts, may surprise you in terms of what's driving revenue. And then the red box is 4 free dashboards Google Analytics provide that allow nonprofits to pull data from multiple reports into one centralized piece. So ultimately, using Google Analytics or something like it to understand your website can help you measure your ROI. What tactic yielded the most results? What online channel is driving traffic or donations through conversions? And based on this, you can understand what you should keep doing and creating, report on profitability, and maybe even understand what isn't worth your time or effort. I could spend so much time talking about social media impact and including ads. This is really taking it one step further, where some organizations invest in online marketing. M&R's 2019 report showed that nonprofits are spending on digital ads increased by 144% in 2018. So this is clearly a growing area of digital strategy for fundraising and acquisition, and it's becoming more important to have some in-house expertise around this. So on the left, what you see are some metrics to look for this avenue where you can think about money spent compared to revenue results. Many organizations think that the number of Facebook or Instagram users are going to be the key metrics to success, but that doesn't show engagement, that doesn't show conversion to donors. That is where it all ties together in a meaningful way. So vanity metrics are referring to data that doesn't exactly speak to or impact your overarching goal. Sometimes these can be distracting, but also sometimes it helps bring people along into your organization. So sharing these types of vanity metrics that people may have interest in, like likes or loves or impressions, you can also then share with them, I think what on the left-hand side is more important, which is your KPI. So how much are you spending? How much is coming in the door through transactions and revenues? At the end of the day, social media is definitely all about expanding outreach to further your fundraising goals, but you also want to be able to share more revenue-driven metrics that really matter more, like conversions and, again, money on ads versus transactions, rather than these vanity metrics. Next is the value of benchmarking. So I love benchmarking. I'm just going to say that up front. I think for those who may not be aware, benchmarking is being able to compare one set of information to another set. And it's so important to leverage and understand your program, and again, to make smart decisions and and to understand your ROI, and to also build buy-in for you. So what it does is it's measuring success and helping you project results. It's demonstrating how choices impact results. It's going to map out where you've been and where you're going and how you can actually get there. It's going to help frame future decisions. You're going to be able to justify those human resources, staff time, budget towards online fundraising, and just different changes in terms of increases in allocation somewhere versus somewhere else. And as my guidelines stated earlier, it's just so you can understand the why and how of your program. So there's two forms of benchmarking, internal and external. Again, for internal, we recommend comparing 1 year to the last. And if you don't have metrics from last year, I'm just going to go ahead and drop a hint and say that this year is a great year to start tracking your metrics. You're also going to want to choose your goal and the information you want to collect before picking variables to measure, such as revenue, traffic sources. So again, this ties back to the beginning. What's your goal? What are you trying to understand? And how can benchmarking help you gather the information to make smart decisions? And next, you'll want to just consider whether you have the necessary tools to get the reports you need. Something else I really love is external resources. So I wanted to share two helpful tools and just encourage you to look at them yourself. M&R Benchmark Yourself and Blackbaud Luminate Report. As I mentioned, even Blackbaud's 2019 Charitable Giving Report came out today, which again is another wonderful resource they have. But these are going to let you look at your online data, so revenue, emails, click-through rates, and all of that by sector and see how you compare. And of course, a lot of variables exist, like organization size, for instance, but it's a really helpful starting point to say, okay, as you see on the example, I'm an environmental organization. I'm curious about our fundraising emails. For this many recipients, we're getting this type of response rate or open rate, and sector on average sees 15%. So should we maybe be thinking through why our open rate isn't as high and what strategies we can use to increase them? Benchmarking is just a really great way to understand your data more and have a comparison point. So again, just to wrap up this guideline, data and metrics are your friends, and I highly encourage you to think of them as a guideline to show ROI, build buy-in for your online giving program. And as I mentioned at the beginning, my guideline number 2, I don't have any supporting slides to come after this, so I just want to think of it as a final thought of the webinar. I think part of what makes leaders and fundraisers and volunteers sometimes apprehensive about online fundraising and the related strategies is that it's relatively new, it's constantly evolving, and it's just not as clearly proven as other fundraising strategies like major gift relationship management. But whether you choose to go all in on email, focus on maybe ads this year, or create the strongest possible reoccurring giving program, I think that the goal is just to get out there and try something new. Risk takers understand value in taking risks and learning from them, even if you don't succeed the first time around. You will learn something and you will bring your program out better in the end. And I just think that's a really critical thought around digital fundraising in general. So remember, it's about building, measuring, and learning, and not just executing in order to help build your buy-in and show ROI. So with that being said, Molly, I'm going to hand it over to you to see if the audience had any questions I can try to answer.
Thanks, Lauren. We don't have any questions just yet, but let's sit tight for a moment just to give everyone a chance if they'd like to submit their questions. So please submit now if you have anything you'd like to pose to Lauren during our time.
And something, Molly, just to say as we're waiting and hanging tight here is that we're going to have my email on the next page. Please, I think that we share so much information in these webinars and it's wonderful, but sometimes you don't catch something we say or you want to just dive in on resources or expand upon a question. So if it's not here today, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email's on the screen. I'm definitely on LinkedIn. You're able to find me. And I'm always happy to connect one-on-one over the phone, over coffee, if you're local in Seattle, get to know you and just to have a better sense of how I can help you too.
Thanks, Lauren. I think we have time for one question, and we've got some questions coming in. Could you give some recommendations on how best to work with frontline fundraisers on annual fundraising?
That's such a great question. So it's kind of one of those things where you do want to make sure you're meeting with whoever needs to be involved on your team. I think with frontline fundraisers, and in my opinion, that could mean membership, mid-level, major gift, those who are really out getting those major gifts in the community. I think it's just best to first share your thoughts with them. I'd like to focus on email strategy, or I'm thinking about how this can tie into our larger program, and I'd love your thinking. I just think I remember when I was doing this at the museum, I would just ask people to meet me for coffee even in my museum and talk them through, like, here are some strategies I'm thinking through for next year. I'd love to hear your thoughts and how I can work with you and what you think. Because essentially when you bring people along in your thinking and you get their feedback, you're going to be building their buy-in along the way. So my recommendation, just based on experience too, for the best way to work with frontline fundraisers is just simply to ask, share your ideas, hear from them. And I think what's most exciting is when you bring them along in your journey and you show how it can increase revenue or how you think it may help increase revenue, a lot of fundraisers are going to say, that's awesome, and tell me how I can plug in and help. We're all working towards the same goal at the end of the day, right? We're just using different channels. So I definitely think just being open with them about your ideas and having conversations and meetings.
Great. Thanks, Lauren.
Okay, well, I see we're at time. And again, Molly received your questions, but if you have any other questions, please follow up with me over email, over LinkedIn. And I just want to thank you so much for tuning in today, joining Campbell & Company on the webinar, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.